right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining another Agile Requirements Designer Community Webcast. Today we have the product team on to discuss release version 2.2. They're going to give a brief presentation on the new release, and then we will open it up to Q&A. Just a reminder, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, or we will be opening the line up for verbal questions at the end of the session. So if you'd like to reserve your question for a verbal question, you can hold it until the end. I'm now going to turn the call over to James Walker. Take it away, James.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so let me know if that's coming through okay, Melanie. Can you see that?
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Right, good. So thank you for the introduction. So just to get started, obviously I guess a lot of you on the call are already part of the CA ARD community, but I know, some of you have been sent links by some of our sales team as well. So, if you're not already a member of the ARD community, please go ahead and join here. And we've got a number of mailing lists set up now as well, so you can keep up to date with some of the, news coming out of the development team, and also some updates on upcoming releases, etc. And what we've done very nicely in the product now is on the right-hand side, you'll see that we actually have a little feed into the community's website. Okay, so you can instantly, whenever you load ARD, you can see some of the top stories and top discussions going on in the community right now. And then also in the middle here, you'll see that there's a little area to sign up to the newsletters. So you have two choices even here. You can either sign up for a regular newsletter, or you can just sign up for a major release update where you're just getting a few notifications. Okay, so just before I get started, there was one other thing I wanted to mention, which is that we're starting up a customer validation program, which is where you can basically sign up for early beta releases of ARD. And typically these are released about 3 weeks before the actual release happens. And what we'll be doing with that is just sending out, a little update of some of the features which are in there for you guys to have early access to. So if anyone's interested in that, either get in contact with me or Melanie, or post on the ARD community, get in contact with someone there, and we can set you up on that scheme. Okay. Good. Right, so what are we going to be talking about today? So firstly, we've got a little bit of news, so I'm just going to talk about that. We're then going to have a brief little recap into version 2.1. So version 2.2 went live last Monday, so we're going to be giving a nice little demo into some of the features which have gone into there. And then finally, we'll be looking ahead to the future, version 2.3, which is going to be released mid-December. And then finally, we'll round up with a little Q&A. So as Melanie says, if you've got any questions throughout the call, feel free to post them in the Q&A section. I think there's a little box in the bottom right-hand corner you can enter those in. And we'll just pick those up at the end, and we'll answer them. Okay, so on to the news. So CA World is happening next month, November the 14th to the 18th. I think between ARD and TDM, there's 26 sessions in total. So there's a lot of content for you guys, for those of you lucky enough to be going to join these sessions. And you'll see that we've just highlighted a few of the ARD ones here. Most notably, you'll see that at the top here we have some pre-conference education. So we've got an ARD 101 class, which is 3 hours long. There's only 40 sessions available for this, so if you guys are interested, definitely book that early to get involved with that. That's going to be a great introduction to ARD for those of you who have anyone in mind, perhaps in your team, who you want to be introducing to ARD in the future. And, there's a bunch of other talks here. These are going to be really great, and kind of an introduction into what we're doing now and into the future where we're taking ARD. Okay, so for those of you who missed the 2.1 webcast, some of the core features which went in here, we had some new functionality for generating scripts using subflows. such that each subflow has its own self-contained script. And Hugh Price is going to be showing some of this, the use of API testing, just towards the end of this call. So I'm just going to glance over this one. Okay, we did some improvements to the Visio importer. So for those of you who've got any existing assets or requirements in Visio format, you're now able to directly import these into ARD. And when we import these in, which is quite nice, is that the coordinate space gets mapped over. So you'll see here that we've taken a little Visio here and we've mapped it back into ARD, and you'll see that, you know, all of the blocks are positioned as they would be inside Visio, which is a nice little bit of usability there. The other nice feature we put in was a fully fledged kind of code editor into the automation configuration. So what you'll see is that whenever you do any functionality with you know, automation scripts or any kind of scripting processes in ARD, we have this editor integrated where you get some nice keyword highlighting, and also down the left-hand side you get your numbering for what line you're on. So this is kind of replicating, you know, what you would typically expect from an IDE when you're creating automation scripts. Okay, so that was just some of the stuff which went into 2.1. I've glanced over this. A lot of the videos for that functionality is available on the communities now. So please go away and watch these videos. It's a great resource to get involved. Okay. Let's move on to 2.2, which, as I say, was released on the 10th of October. And let's get into the fun stuff and start going through some demos. Okay, so the first new feature which has gone in is our new ALM integration. Now, a lot of you will be aware that we've had an ALM connector already available previously. And what we've done now is we're integrating with the New World ALM, which is made available to us for a REST API. So for those of you who are using the previous connector, you would have had to have connected to a middle service, which then in turn connected to the ALM service. So now we're directly connected with ALM using this new connector, which you'll see here, ALM REST. So I'm just going to give a bit of a walkthrough into this new connector. I'm going to open up one of our favorite flows here, which is the leg before wicket. And I'm just going to click on the ALM REST connector. What you'll see on the right-hand side is that it's opened up the connectors doc. And very much what we're doing at the moment is aligning all of the integrations to have the same look and feel using the same objects. So you'll see that this is kind of in tandem with the Jira connector, which we've been working on a lot recently as well. So I just directly copy in my URL to ALM here. This is where my ALM service is hosted currently. And I'm just going to enter in my password. And I'm going to click login. And this is going to go away now and log me into the ALM service. My internet's being a little slow today, so you'll have to forgive me. This takes a couple of seconds. Okay, right, I'm in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through and expand my tree. Now, what you'll notice here is that this may not be perhaps what you were quite expecting for the ALM you know, tree hierarchy to look at. Usually when I log into ALM, I have to specify a domain and a project to log into. Now, what's nice about this is that once I'm logged in, I can view all of my domains, all of my projects available instantly, okay? So I don't have to log back out, log back in if I want to change between projects, okay? I just have to log in once, and then it's all available to me. Okay, so what we're going to do first off is we're going to create some test cases for this flow we have here, and we're going to go ahead and export them into ALM using the new connector. I'm going to go into the Path Explorer, and we'll see I've got 3 test cases already here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Export and go to, actually before I do this, I'm going to take a step back and show you what's going on in the background. So if I go into File Configuration and General Configuration here, you'll see that what we have is an ALM REST tab here. Now what's nice about this is you'll see that it's got all of my projects and all of my domains listed. Now for each project I have a test and a design step tab here, okay? So what I can do is if I click on my test, okay, which represents the path inside ARD, what I can do is I can map any fields inside ALM to any field inside ARD, okay? So this is a very flexible interface. I can go in and define any custom mapping for how I want to export and import between ALM and ARD. So you'll see that if I click on, for instance, the test name, at the moment this is linked up to the path name inside ARD. But I could go through and I can link this up to perhaps some custom fields or any other field which I deem relevant for this purpose, okay? And if I click on design step here, you'll see that it has the same kind of mapping format. And what's nice about this as well is any custom fields that are in ALM are also picked up here, so we're getting the full range of mapping available. So now we have that in mind, that mapping available, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to export some test cases. We're going to the export menu and I'm going to select our new ALM REST connector and click export. In this instance, I'm not going to be using any test data, so I'll check that. Now what we have is the full ALM structure on the left, and I'm just going to select this folder here, LVW. And you'll see that I have a few options of how I can export these, either as test cases or design steps. So I'm going to export this as 3 distinct test cases, and you'll see there's a few options here where I can expand plug flows, I can go in, I can attach images for the paths, and I can also upload my test data as well. I'm going to click OK, and what you'll see down the bottom here is that my ALM REST has started. Now this is fully asynchronous, so I can go ahead and, perhaps generate some more test cases in ARD while this is exporting, or, I could just wait for it, which is what I'm going to do now. And you'll see that I have, a notification appear here saying it's started, and I've just got a new notification saying this is finished and it's been successful, which is great. So what I can do now is I'm going to go into ALM, and I just need to give a quick little refresh here. Taking a bit of time. Okay, so that's completed. And if I open up this folder here, okay, so this seems to be quite a slow state. Okay, you'll see that I have my 3 test cases which have been exported into ALM. Now, just to highlight this, if I go into the test cases now and take a look at each of these, what you'll see is that I have an external link present for each of the test cases, which represents where the test case lives inside ALM. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a very trivial change to one of my test cases now. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change the name of that test case. I'm going to call this bold out, okay? And you'll see the test case name has changed here. Now, the reality is this is a very simple change, but this could, be some change to the actual underlying test itself. So I may have modified my, my model, and I may have repaired this test case, which has obviously impacted the test steps. Now, what we have inside the new ALM connector is this little synchronize button here. And if I just click on that, what it's going to do is it's going to run through each of my test cases, okay? And it's going to do a little comparison as to which test cases which test cases are not the same in ALM as they are in ARD. So what you'll see here is it's picked up this specific test case and it's marked in blue the test case where there's changes or there's differences in the data. So the idea here is that we're going to use ARD as our central point of truth, and we're going to fire up any changes made to our test cases into wherever that test may live, in this case ALM, but in reality it could be spread across multiple services, you know, Rally and ALM, for instance. So what I have is a little button here which I can click, and if I switch between them, you'll see this is what the data currently is in ALM, and this is what the data is currently inside ARD. So I can select the point of truth here and fire up an update to make those changes apparent. Now, just like the other integrations, I can go ahead and I can select test cases to drag and drop onto the scene to import them. And I could do multiple test cases at a time as well, which is obviously similar to the JIRA functionality. Okay, so that's ALM. So we've got our full import, export, and synchronized functionality inside there, which is in a much more user-friendly format. Now, the other point I just want to touch on quickly is that we have functionality in here for the call to test component, or as many of you may know, QC module, where we can embed test cases, where test cases are embedded inside of each other. So we can drag and drop these onto the palette inside ARD, and likewise, whenever we export from ARD, we can select to synchronize with these and update existing links. Okay, and the other just brief little slide here is with this new ALM connector, we're getting some pretty big performance enhancements. So definitely move over to the new ALM if you're using the existing ALM at the moment. Okay, so we're going to move on to the new data painter functionality. So with that, I'm going to pass presenter over to Andre. So Andre, if you want to take it over, that would be great.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me share my screen. And let me know when you can see the screen.
I can see it.
That's coming through.
Okay.
That's great.
Good. So basically, for this new feature of the data painter, we've made it made it easier to read and construct data painter expressions, because basically the idea behind the feature is that to make it is that previously data painter expressions were fairly difficult to read, and it's easy to make syntax errors in, and there was no syntax checking, so it was not user friendly. So the idea behind this new feature is to make it more readable and easy to construct. And this is not the final version of this feature, so we will make a couple more improvements over the coming sprints. But it is definitely useful as it is already, so we wanted to release it, as soon as possible. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples showing this new feature. So if I come in here and let's say I want a variable called last login date, okay? And let's say the value was, let's just say I want it to be 4 months before the current date, okay? So that would give us some value, okay? Or in fact, I need to give it -4 to give us 4 months before, right? Now, as you see, when I click this button, we still get the old data painter. So if you want to switch to the new version, we have to click this button. This is just because, as I said, it's not the final version. We don't want to force people to use it. But if we click this button, we will now get this new tree representation of this function. And what this allows us to do is change this expression and edit it more easily. So for example, let's say I don't want to use the current date, I want to use 2 years ago. So I can select the value here, click on edit selected sub-expression, and now I can say, let's say I want to do add to the current date -24 months, okay? And now we've edited our expression, our original expression, with this new value here. And let's say I want to, instead of exactly 4 months, I want to, let me just edit this again, and say instead of 4, just a random number between 10 and 5, okay? So if I just select round range, -10 to -5, and we see our expression, our original expression has now been edited with all the changes we've made. And you can go deeper and deeper with this, and you know, make more and more complicated expressions. You get features like highlighting the, you know, the part of the expressions, and it may not be visible exactly, you know, it may not be apparent how helpful this is with this example, but if I copy and paste another value, for example here, so this is a very complicated or very long data paint expression, and it's not easy to see what it exactly does and which parts are, you know, to do with the case statement, which parts are to do with the execute SQL and so on. So what I can do now is just parse this into the tree, and in here now we see all the different parts of this statement, and we can start modifying some of them. We can replace some variables with values or vice versa, and so on. Okay, so we get the benefits of better readability and better, you know, easier to construct without syntax errors. So for example, if there was a, you know, if I accidentally typed another ampersand or @ here, it would not be easy to spot, and the error message we get from the normal expression would not, you know, it would not guarantee us that we can spot this. But now there's syntax checking in, you know, before you actually fire off the resolver, so it will tell you if there's an error in your expression and highlight it exactly where it is. Okay. And the last bit that that it does is you can, you know, you can resolve small bits of your expression. Let's say if I go back to my previous one, I can resolve, let's say I want to just check how this looks like, what this part of the expression looks like. I can just resolve that one, see the value that we would get, okay? And as I said, this is not the final, so we're going to implement, you know, make it a bit even easier to use. These buttons, you know, should be incorporated inside, you know, when you start editing automatically, these should be synchronized and things like that. We are going to make more improvements on these, but even now, it's definitely useful to, you know, validate and build new data painter expressions. Okay, that's it for this feature. What I'm going to show now, next one, is the automation keyword mapping function. So what the idea behind this is, you know, to take away some of the, you know, to make it easier to map the automation parameters on top of your existing flow, or, you know, or do it as you build the flow. And the reason behind it is because, you know, it takes time to add the, you know, if I had to do this manually, for example, if I create a process block called login, and I wanted to automate this, if I had this in my flow, I would go double click it, go into automation, click add, and if I had the correct automation, which was switch, in fact, let me do that real quick. I would add a parameter code, enter into the username field the text Andre, and then add enter into the password field the text password and so on. So it does take a bit of time, and what this feature does is allow you to more quickly create these automated blocks, and also what it does is allow non-technical users to build the flow, and it would automatically, it would on its own do the automation script for it. So let me just go into the feature itself, so it will probably make more sense when I show it. So under each layer in the automation, now we have this, under advanced settings, we have this checkbox saying if you want to automatically map actions from block attributes, and I've checked these block description and output description, which I'll explain why in a moment. And once we have this set like so, in the objects and actions, we can do things like parameterize the action name itself, so make it into plain English, make the action name into plain English, parameterized with some variables that will be provided when you create the blocks, and use the same variables to create the actual code snippet that is going to execute this. Okay, so as you can see, we have the enter text into text field action name, and we have the corresponding code snippet, okay, that uses the same variables. So what this allows us now to do is, if I create this login block again, call it login, this time in the description, I say enter Andre into user name field, and enter password 123 into password field, and click login button. Okay. Now, if I just finish creating this block, and if I go inside it, we'll see that the automation steps here have been added automatically based on the description that we provided. And it's used the automation parameters that that I showed just now, and it's filled in the variables with the text that I specified. So if I go back here, let's say I want to also log out at the same time, and I can just say and then click. As you can see, I forgot to mention, but you get this pop-up here with the autocomplete, basically, of the list of actions that you have defined in your, plain text action names. Okay, so, and I say click log out button, we'll see that our automation list of automation steps has been updated to include this step that I just added here. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to show is that this also works for decisions as well. So if I create a decision called back or forward, and under, in the output descriptions, I say under true, I say click back button and click forward button. And if I finish, if I go back in again and see the automation tab, we see that we have our two outputs with the corresponding automation steps with the corresponding buttons that we want to click. Okay. So again, this makes, so the idea of the feature is that it accelerates creating these automation steps, and it also allows non-technical users to actually generate the automation script as they provide the description of the blocks and as they build the flow. So they would not need to know anything about how this looks like in the actual code snippet here, or how it looks in the particular language that their automation engineers have provided here. Okay. So that's it, I think, for this feature. I think I'm going to pass it over to Bill to show a small or like a really useful feature, small but really useful feature about the subflows that is gone in. Okay. Bill, you should be presenter now, I think. Yeah. Can you hear?
Bill, have you done? You've got to press #6 to unmute yourself.
Hello.
That's good.
So yeah, just going to show you relative paths in subflows. So before we could only add links to subflows in Agile Designer as absolute paths. So you basically, the problem with that is if you move a whole pack of subflows together, your links are broken. So we've very recently just added the opportunity to use relative paths. So what that means is you can move a whole tree of subflows together. So if I have a look at, I've got an example here. I can show you the folder along with the tree here. You can see that there's a master flow and it's got a child and subflows, and that child has a child itself in another subflows folder. Basically, you can, from here, you can open the whole tree of subflows. This relative path means that all I need to do when making a copy, I can literally just copy and paste the folder. So if I wanted to move this whole folder of subflows, I could, and the references would stay intact. So if I open this copy that I've just made here, and I show you the open subflows in new tabs and tools, you'll see that the path, in the path you can see original flows copy, so the references have stayed intact. Yeah, that's all. James, do you want to take this?
Yeah, sorry, I was just muted then. Okay, yeah, I'll take that back.
Shall I nip in now, Shall I nip in now, James, and just quickly show the stuff I got?
Yeah, if you'd like to, yes.
Yeah, because it's related to the subflow panel that Bill just showed.
Okie doke. Okay, so this is actually, so one of the issues is once you start getting into kind of API testing, then you've got lots of different APIs. And when you're looking at the optimization of all of the different, that API could have a whole bunch of actions going on in there with lots and lots of different potential test cases that you care about. So what you can do is you can go and do a right click and say the default subflow integration is all in-out edges, all nodes, or the stored paths that already exist. So I might have created some stored paths in there. Now the problem is it's actually quite tedious to be able to have to go down because you might have a subflow calling a subflow calling a subflow. So what you can do is if you go to Tools, you'll see Open Chain Subflow Optimization. So these are all the subflows called by the master flow. They're all at the same level at this moment, but they could be sub processes indented. And what you can do then is you can say, well, for this one, I'm actually going to set the default to all possible paths. So this allows you to, when you're designing your test cases, to think, well, I'm going to exhaustively test that one. Or you might want to say, well, let's do all in-out edges, something like that, because all in-out edges is going to give us 19, which is going to test most of the logic gates within there. And then the other ones, I'm just going to do the minimum testing I can get away with. So in effect, what you're thinking about is allowing you to play around with the sub-processes in terms of the depth of testing. So when it comes to considering sort of a chain test where you're calling lots of APIs, you could almost test each API in isolation, and the other ones are just there to almost just pass data to make a call and to actually get to the end of the integration test. But the rest of them, the only thing you really want to test exhaustively is this one. So you might want to then, once you've done that one, to switch around and say, well, okay, let's turn that one down to the minimum, and let's look at the customer one, and we're going to go through all possible, because I really care about that one. And that's up into 12. So we'll probably put another layer of optimization techniques on top of this, where we almost do this for subflows, and we'll give you a, give us the two, maybe an all nodes and all in-out edges, and we'll create you a whole set of test cases to test the chain of API calls. So it's actually quite an interesting area, this. But this one screen lets you do that, open chain subflow optimization, without having to go through every single subflow. Okay? Now, I just want to switch gears slightly now. Some of you might possibly have the DevTest app test product. Okay. Now, we're just working on some integration with it. We do have some integration already, but there is integration that's been out there all along. What we haven't done is done a very good job of explaining it to you. So this is actually what I'm doing here is I'm doing a SOAP test. Now, that block, that block, that block, that block, that block, that block, and that block are all exactly the same for an API test. So what we'll do is when we ship Agile Designer, we'll actually ship you this example flow. Now, what is it actually doing? If you look at this SOAP call, actually let's have a go in and have a little look at it. This is the actual SOAP call that we're calling. You can see there's a whole series of input parameters that are actually passed into this particular SOAP call. And what we've done in Agile Designer is we've modeled a set of valid is that way, and a set of invalid combinations of parameters. So the invalid ones should be rejected, all the valid ones should be processed, okay? Now, that is classic Agile Designer. There's nothing in there that's particularly hard. The exception is that what you end up with is a set of input. Think of this as a data-driven API test. So each one of these test cases has got a set of input parameters which then drive into the API. So here's the level types, which is one of the variables. Here's one of the another variable, another variable, another variable, another variable. I think it's about actually 6 of them. So those variables there are what the test harness is going to do. It's basically going to read this, run the test, read this, run the test, read this, run the test. And the way you do that is you basically export these physical values. You could export them to a CSV, but it's actually better if you pop them into actually the TDM product, because the TDM product has very, very good version management. And here what I've done is I've actually popped this data inside to what we call a data pool. Now, all the DevTest or app test product is doing is it is now just going to, it's now literally going to read through that data pool, which is the data-driven set of data. And the advantage of it being, using the TDM product is that if I want to refresh the data, in other words, I need to go and find some new data to work with, I've got to look up some new account numbers or, session IDs or something like that, then I can do that as part of what we call a publish in TDM. So you could actually pop a publish at the beginning here. And all it's doing is it's reading through each row, depending on the level. It's logging what's happening. It's logging the file, it's updating the original. So if you go back here, what you'll see, I've just run this before, you'll see actually here we've got a run status of passed and failed. So as it's running through, if it was invalid and it actually created a level, then that's actually that should be a fail. So there's the inverse relationships there. But hopefully you can see that this is just a way of using the app test product to do an API test, but it's actually been driven by the Agile Designer design of the appropriate set of parameters, both valid and invalid. Okay, so I think that's me done. If you just want to pop back to James.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for that, Hugh. Hugh, you may need to pass the. Okay, great.
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Right, share my screen here. Okay, good. Right, so on a similar note, so for those of you who are already familiar with API testing or service virtualization, you'll kind of be already familiar with these kinds of files here. So we've got a request. Actually, if we go to XML, we've got a request here, which is asking a service, calling a particular method on a web service. And then given that request, our service is sending back a response, okay? So you'll see here we've got quite a big response. Now, one of the difficulties is that, if we're generating this data, perhaps we're doing it by hand, it becomes very, very difficult for us and very tedious in the way that we have to end up copy and pasting these request responses, making very minor changes between them perhaps, inserting different data in between tags. Right? Now, on the communities, Hugh posted quite a comprehensive video, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, explaining how to model request responses from scratch and generating those. And what we've done since then is we've been working on a little accelerator to help take in existing request responses for both XML and also JSON, okay, to reverse engineer a flow out of these and, to act as an accelerator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into ARD and show you how this works. And I'm just going to create a new flow here, which is going to be XML message. Okay, now if I go into import here, what you'll see is down the bottom we've got a new little importer, which is request response importer. And if I click on this, it's going to ask me for either an XML or a JSON file. And in this case, I'm just going to pick out a singular response, which is the big one we saw before. Now, I've brought this in, and what it's done for me is it's created a hierarchy of the XML. So if I just take a little look at what this looks like, you'll see that, at the top we've got the envelope tag here, which encapsulates everything. And as I start going down, you'll see that, I go into the body tag, and then through that I can go down to each of my individual accounts I have listed here, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select some specific tags that I'm interested in the XML. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to select to import the accounts as a process, and I'm going to parameterize all of the values given for that specific account here. And I'm going to do the same for my addresses as well. I'm going to bring those in as a process, and I'm just going to parameterize the city in this case here, which is Atlanta originally. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here is I'm manipulating the hierarchical structure of the XML to allow me to specify what I want to bring into ARD as distinct processes, and also parameterize up such that I can then go ahead in ARD and start inserting some test data, generated in the back end using perhaps DataMake or TDM. Okay, so I've specified how I want to import this file, and I'm going to click Accept, and you'll see that what it's done here is it's brought in the blocks. So I'm just going to do a quick little relayout. And basically what we have is a linear flow here. So we have our start tag, which is the envelope tag. We've then got the accounts block, which we specified to bring in the addresses. And then finally, we're closing the envelope tag we started. Okay, so this is what we defined. Now, in the back end, what it's done to the XML, so go to the automation configuration, is it's chopped up the XML according to what I specified. So you'll see here the accounts have all been parameterized up as so. So you'll see the name's been parameterized here for the name tag. And if I look at the addresses, you'll see that only the city tag's been parameterized here, and the other are containing the static data, which was representative in the XML. And similarly for the envelope tag, the rest of the XML is present. So we've got our flow, which has been imported, and we've got the automation configuration in the back end. Now, what ARD has done quite cleverly is if I go into the automation tab here, is it's linked these up to the blocks, okay, and added the appropriate variables with the original test data used. And it's done this for all of the processes I've brought in. So you'll see here for the addresses, it's brought in the address tag and linked it up. So now if I go into Path Explorer and generate a test case here, and I take a look at the corresponding automation, which in this case is a little XML script, which has been generated, you'll see that we end up with the original automation, the original XML document, which was specified on import, okay? So what this has acted as is a little accelerator to bring this in. And now what I can start to do is adding some color to this, XML message, and I can start adding in some decisions, overlaying some test data, and start to bolt this out so I can start to generate, the other messages I require for my testing. Now, what's also nice about this is I can embed this flow now inside other flows, so I can get the corresponding, messages to bind to my automation scripts. Okay, so that's for the XML and JSON importer. And I think that's everything we wanted to go through for the 2.2 release. And I just want to give a quick little run through of some of the stuff we're working on for version 2.3, which is targeted for a mid-December release. I think we're looking at around the 10th of December. So we're working on some new wireframing functionality, which is going to allow rapid prototyping from existing requirements. So you can start testing your requirements earlier on in the cycle. We're working on integrations with other CA products, service virtualization, release automation, and as Hugh just showed, that app test as well. We're working on ETL testing framework inside ARD, and also we're adding a new integration into Team Foundation Server for those who use the Microsoft stack. And also what's been missed off here is we're also adding an integration into Confluence, which is going to go through into the 2.3 release as well. Okay, so that's everything from us. So Melanie, I'm just going to pass the ball back over to you so you can open the floor to any questions.
Okay, thank you, James. So we're going to be opening up for questions right now. Once again, if you have any questions, you have the option to either enter them into the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner, or if you'd like to ask a verbal question, you can click #6 on your telephone keypad to unmute yourself. We're going to give a few minutes for people to compile questions in. Okay, Nimai Patty, I see that you're raising your hand. If you'd like to ask a Q&A question, you can put that into the box in the bottom right-hand corner. You can just type right in and click send, or #6 on your telephone keypad will allow you to unmute yourself, so you can just go ahead and ask. Okay, she put it in the chat. Can you please share the presentation or detailed documents on this ARD version? So yes, we will be posting a version of this presentation to the community later today, along with a recording and the Q&A transcript. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be called Webcast Recap, and we'll post it to the ARD community. Okay, if there are no other questions, I think we'll wrap up for today. Before you exit, please be sure to take the poll. We have a poll out asking you to please rate the quality of today's webcast topic. We really value your input, and we like to take your feedback and use that to contribute to future topics. So your vote is appreciated there. Also, you'll see in the slide in the main window, we have an upcoming event on TDM. So I know they're related products. If you're interested in learning about the new TDM release as well, you can click on that link or head to the Dev Test community and RSVP to that event. We also have a replay from our last office hours session on ARD with the same team posted to the ARD community. If you have any questions on the previous version, you can check that out. We had a live Q&A session and a lot of great conversation on that. Okay, so if that's it for today, thank you everyone so much for joining. Thank you to the team for giving the presentation today. You did a really great job, and I hope to see you at our next event. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.